Most people think retirement is all about saving enough money, but what if I told you there's a hidden challenge that could completely derail your plans? It's something few are talking about, but it's critical for your future. MIT researchers divide up life into four segments of 8,000 days. The first stage is learning. Learning is birth to mid 20s. This stage represents early life where individuals focus on education, skill building, and personal development. Growing is the next stage. Growing occurs in your mid 20s to your mid 40s. This stage focuses on building a life and achieving major milestones such as career advancement, starting a family, and establishing financial stability. The third phase is maturing. Maturing is your mid 40s to your mid 60s. This stage is about reflecting on accomplishments, refining priorities, and focusing on preparing for retirement. The last stage, exploring, is when people are now in retirement, oftentimes without a plan for how to live and navigate the changes as we age. In this episode, we're diving into the unexpected and often overlooked risks that could make or break your retirement. Don't miss this. Your future self will thank you. Welcome to Retirement Rescue Weekly, where we throw a lifeline to your financial future. This podcast is dedicated to helping rescue retirees from potential dangers that appear in retirement. I'm Kurt Arnold, your host and financial advocate. I'll guide you through the stormy seas of retirement. We'll tackle inflation, taxation, market volatility, and healthcare costs. Together, we'll secure your retirement. Tune in and start your rescue mission today. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Retirement Rescue Weekly. I'm Kurt Arnold, financial host and advocate. It is great to be with you today. Today is an episode that I think if you do some research, you're not going to find a lot of information on. Most people in my industry don't talk about this part, but I think it's very important. So we're going to go dive deep in today about how to create a retirement living plan. Now, where I got this idea is I was talking to some clients and I remember them saying, I asked them like, hey, what's the plan for the week or whatever? And they said, well, we're going to go to Panera in the morning like we always do. And I said, well, tell me more about that. And they said one of the things they learned in retirement is they had to create some purpose, some schedule, because otherwise they're going to end up on the couch. They're going to watch TV all day long. And before you know it, retirement would just kind of wane by and eventually they would pass away. And they said they didn't want that. And so I kind of started researching more into this topic to see how I could help more for other clients. And I went down this rabbit hole of all the stuff I found that I'm going to share with you today to help you understand how we can actually create a living plan in retirement. So let's get into it. So today we're going to talk about the 8,000 days of retirement, that final stage, and how we can create a retirement living plan. So let's start with their quote, like we always do. Arthur Morgan says, preparation for old age should begin not later than one's teens. A life which is empty on purpose until 65 will not suddenly become filled on retirement. So obviously we can't just all of a sudden retire and say, what are we going to do? We got to be planning for that throughout our whole life. And then retirement's an extension of that. So today what we're going to do is we're going to dive deeper into that final stage, which MIT Age Lab calls the exploring years. And there's four parts of that last stage, which is about 22 years. The first stage, the honeymoon phase, then the big decision phase, navigating longevity phase, and then finally the solo journey phase. And we're going to go into that now, kind of explain, and we're going to dive deeper into it as we go through this episode. Is what does retirement look like? Oftentimes, couples have never asked the question of themselves, and sometimes couples have a difference of opinion on what that retirement should look like. For me and my family, we enjoy spending time together and traveling the world. One of the things that gives me the most peace is having my feet in the sand, listening to the waves come in, and watching the sunset. For my clients, it may be spending time with children and grandchildren, or maybe it's getting that house in the lake and throwing a line off the pier each day. Possibly it's taking off to see other parts of our country or even the world. Or maybe you're just tired of winters and desire to become a snowbird. It is important to take time to develop a retirement living plan. That will greatly help you understand where and how you might be living. It will help you understand potential savings goals to reach. Let's say you desire a $5,000 per month income in retirement. Will that number include your trips, or do you need to save extra on top of that? Getting your income fine-tuned will help you ensure you can fund monthly living expenses and ultimately fund your longevity of life.
Remember, we want you to retire comfortably and live comfortably in retirement. Another way to think about retirement is using the MIT Age Labs resource, 8,000 Days in Retirement. MIT says there are typically 4 phases of retirement. Number 1, the honeymoon phase. Number 2, the big decision phase. Number 3, navigating longevity phase. And number 4, the solo journey phase. But let's quickly talk about each phase. The honeymoon phase. The transition into retirement can be slower rather than a clean break. Maybe you start to cut down working hours to part-time, or maybe you stay on with your company as a consultant. In this phase, you may be anxious about your new lifestyle. Maybe your friends are still working. You may want to get out of the house more, so budget for more restaurants and activities. The big decision phase. Once the honeymoon stage is over and you are adjusted to be fully retired, you are now faced with some big decisions. This could include where you will live, how you'll get around, and who you'll spend your time with. Do you downsize your home or move to a one-level property? Are you considering moving to a warmer climate or near family? Instead of thinking about work, your thoughts are on travel or hobbies, and maybe even spending your time giving back. Will you continue to drive? How will you get around for basic needs such as medical appointments and groceries? The navigating longevity phase. You may start to experience risk to longevity such as health concerns, mobility, and cognitive abilities not as they once were. Your needs may be greater, but resources may be smaller. Ensure you have the right Medicare coverage and estate planning is up to date. If you're still living in your home, how can you do so safely and independently? And finally, the solo journey phase. In this phase, health or physical issues can abruptly come to the forefront, but the loss of a spouse or partner may be even greater. If your spouse needs extended long-term care or passes, you may be living alone. So let me ask you, what does your retirement look like? Hopefully this gave you some ideas so now you can develop a retirement living plan. Let's talk now to ensure we can work towards your retirement goals.
All right, so going through that video, you probably saw some things you're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense, or I've seen family go through that, or, I've heard about that, but I haven't really thought about it. So we're going to kind of walk you through the 4 different parts of living retirement. The first being the honeymoon phase. Honeymoon phase is when we're first either transitioning into retirement or in retirement. So sometimes, retirement's a little bit different for everybody these days. Some people kind of start transitioning in terms of maybe cutting back hours or going into consulting. Some people just literally rip the Band-Aid off and say, here's my key card, give me my gold watch, I'm retired. So it's different these days, but this is the transition phase. So work might stop. And for a lot of people, that identity is their job for some of them. So they have to figure out how to transition into not working anymore. Their income is going to change. So instead of getting that paycheck every 2 weeks, they have to bill a paycheck. So when do we start Social Security and pensions? And when do we start drawing from assets and all those things? So a little bit different then. We want to make sure we create a purpose. We talked at the beginning about how we don't do that when we get to retirement. We start doing that earlier in life. We want to make sure we have that set up because otherwise it's going to cause some issues. Family dynamics. At this stage, sometimes we're taking care of kids, but we're also taking care of parents too. They call that the sandwich generation, where maybe there's some different dynamics with that. And it's really important that we have some social connections, some other couples, some friends, people we can do life with. Because obviously when we get to retirement, we're not working. We want to make sure we have some purpose for life. Now let's find some more ways to find purpose. Think about some hobbies you may have or interests. I know a lot of guys like to go golfing. Women like to go shopping or get nails done, things like that. So find some purpose around that. Set some goals. Like, what do you want to accomplish? Is there some trips you want to take as a couple, or some things you want to do that maybe on the bucket list? That's why you hear about the bucket list so much. What do you want to get accomplished? And set some goals. Stay socially engaged. That's why those people got up every morning to go to Panera. It's because they wanted to have a way to connect with people on a daily basis and stay connected with those people to life. Some people will work part-time because they want to stay socially engaged for that. I have a great uncle that he volunteers and gives tours of the local zoo, and he was working part-time at a nursery where he would basically he did it really for a discount so he could get some plants and things for his house, but he liked the social part of it too. So create some daily structure. Don't just wake up and say, what are we gonna do today? Kind of map out your week and your day and stuff so you kind of have some purpose. And then, try to find some new things. Like, what are some things that maybe you've thought about but haven't looked at yet? Let's maybe it's a time to try those new things. Get out and volunteer. There's a lot of great organizations. Maybe it's part of your church, or maybe it's part of a nonprofit in the area, or some things that you like. Find some ways to help. Join some clubs or groups, and that's a great way to meet people right away. Utilize technology. Sometimes, depending on where our loved ones are or our friends, we can use Zoom, or we can use Facebook or whatever to stay in touch with those people so that we still have those social connections. Stay active in your community. Again, that's volunteering. That's, I've seen people go help out at schools, people drive buses, all kinds of things that you can do to stay active in your community. And then maintain those existing relationships. Don't let those stop that you're not working anymore. Sometimes people have work friends, and then when they stop working, they don't talk to those work friends anymore. Find a way to make sure you stay in touch with those people, which takes some effort. Now let's go to the second part of retirement, the big decision phase, and let's kind of break down more about that. You heard us talking about the housing, how important that is. We may decide to downsize. We may decide to move. Sometimes moving might be to a warmer climate, like a snowbird, or a permanent move to a warmer climate. We may need to move to a different house because maybe it's not set up for us to age in. Maybe it's a multiple story house, and we, as we age, we're going to need a ranch. We may have to adapt the house to make it suitable for aging. Financial planning is going to be really important this stage, because we've got to make sure our income is good. We've got to start addressing taxes. And we're going to have to make sure that we're thinking about long-term care expenses. So a lot of this stuff is related in this part of that phase. We might have to make some lifestyle adjustments now. Maybe as we're aging, we have some health issues, or maybe inflation is causing us to really have a good budget, make sure that we're being careful about how we're spending to make sure it lasts. And we want to make sure we're staying in touch with family and social connections. I know, thinking about my grandma, she would make up holidays, I felt like, just to get us all together. We had a pool at her house, and she'd just order pizza and say, come over. And that was the reason. So find ways to stay connected with family and friends. If you're going to downsize, let's kind of look at the plus and minuses. So it could lower housing costs, whether it's a mortgage or rent. You might have to pay less utility bills, which could have a benefit. If you sell your house, maybe you get some a windfall of cash that you can inject into your financial plan to help with longevity. So maybe there's some benefits of selling the house, and maybe it's more convenient to downsize too. Now, some cons against that. Maybe that house is something you lived in for years, and there's an emotional attachment. My grandpa actually built the house they lived in, and so she didn't want to leave that house. That was an emotional attachment for her, and she wanted to stay in that house as long as she could. Now, if you downsize, maybe you're going to a smaller spot, so maybe you're going to have some storage limitations, and that could create some issues as well. Maybe the cost of moving is just too expensive. I know that from a recent experience of moving across the country. It's not cheap, so maybe that's a con. And then right now the interest rates are high. So I've had some people say, I want to downsize, but I can't right now, because if I'm going to downsize, it's almost a lateral move. I'm not even getting a financial impact because their interest rates are way higher than what mine is. And then my payment's going to be still high anyway. So it doesn't really benefit me. Make sure you're preparing your home for long-term care. We talked about that briefly earlier. You maybe have to make some modifications for accessibility, like a ramp. Maybe you have to do some things with the bathroom, with like the bathtub and shower, or putting up some rails. Some people have actually had to move bathrooms and bedrooms to the first floor to make sure, or even laundry facilities to make sure that those are easier. Maybe make sure you have some safety enhancements. Make sure that all that stuff is kind of set up before we start aging. But I want to start thinking about, if you are going to move too, are we close enough to healthcare? Some people like to be, in the country, but maybe that's far away from healthcare if you had to go to an emergency room or something like that. And so maybe that's going to be a prohibitive thing for you. Maybe you need to move closer to a facility that you want to get care at as well. And then financial planning, we want to make sure we minimize the effect that long-term care expenses can have on our retirement, so we can protect our spouse. So again, we want to make sure we're doing some planning to protect from that. And then of course, home maintenance too. We want to make sure that we can still do some things while we're able to, and make sure that everything is kind of taken care of then. Third phase, now navigating longevity. And some of these things now we're going to start seeing as we age, things are going to change. So it's really important that we're managing our health, taking care of ourselves. Now, here's where we might start seeing some cognitive issues where maybe we're not remembering as well, or maybe there's some more there too. It could be dementia, Alzheimer's type thing too, where it's starting to realize that we're not quite what we were in the past. We still want to make sure we're making social connections, but in this phase, we might start seeing some of our friends and family maybe depart us. And so we might lose some social connections. So we might have to think about making sure that we're making new ones. And then some financial complexity here now too. As we're aging, those medical expenses are going to really increase. So we have to make sure that we're able to address that as it comes up. Now with health management, make sure you're getting regular exercise. I had someone tell me not too long ago, I'm in my 40s, but they said how important it is that weightlifting is. And it's not like we're asking you to go out and, join the Olympics or, be a power lifter or anything like that. But if you just, continue to do some basic things to build some muscle, that will really help you when you get older as far as mobility. That's where, when people get older, they lose that muscle, and that's when people start falling and things like that. So regular exercise is really important, good for cardio as well. Make sure you're eating right. Sometimes you might have to hire someone to help you with doing that because not everybody knows how to do that. Stress management, there's a lot of stressors. Inflation is a big one for people today because of how much things are costing, like groceries. Make sure you're getting quality sleep. Staying socially active in some way so you can still, even when you have health issues come up, you're still being connected to people in some way. Now, if we're losing people in this stage, which happens, make sure that we're acknowledging that grief and getting help. You could join some clubs and groups to establish some new connections. Sometimes, unfortunately, it sounds kind of weird, but we don't want to look at it like we're replacing somebody, but we do want to make sure that we are still staying connected and having that social part of our life because it's so important in retirement. If you're having some trouble because you lost a spouse or lost a friend, seek support. Go to your church. There's some nonprofits. There's some city organizations that can help you. And make sure you're maintaining those existing connections. Don't lose touch with those people because they need it just as much as you do. So make sure you're maintaining those connections. Look for ways to volunteer. Get connected to a local senior center or a library, things like that. There's a lot of different places you can really utilize someone like you that you can be really valuable for them and you can be valuable, they can be valuable for you as well. So we're going to move into the final phase of retirement, the solo journey phase. And the solo journey phase, what happens here now is we typically lose a spouse or the spouse loses us. And that's where loneliness can play a huge impact on us. We might lose some other friends and family as well, which could also have an impact on us. Our health is starting to decline again as we're getting deeper into retirement. Financial planning could be a huge concern at this point because if you lose a spouse, we're probably losing one of the two Social Securities. We could lose a pension. So now we have to create that paycheck again, but we're losing a lot of income sources. But a lot of times our expenses aren't changing as much, or maybe they're even going up with medical expenses. So this could be an issue. And we talked about it in the previous episode, how when women, because they live longer than men, when they lose those income sources from men, a lot of times women are left in a financial hardship situation, 70% of them actually, because they didn't have a plan for survivorship. So really important you have that financial planning done for that as well. And emotionally, it can be hard when you lose your spouse, and it can be hard when those income goes away and those friends start passing. So that's where it's going to be. You're going to really need some rocks in your life that can really be supportive for you. Now, when you lose a spouse, again, we talked about increased loneliness. There's something called the widower's effect, the widowhood effect, where statistically speaking, you're more likely to pass away sooner because of the loneliness. So that's why it's so important that you have other family and friends to be there with you. And then as your health increases to decline, that you have that support as well. Now, maybe as we get older, I know sometimes I had a family member that would forget to take their medications because they're just getting older. We got to make sure that we have people helping us. And then having some other support as well. You still staying socially active, still connecting with people in different ways and finding ways to do it. My grandma had arthritis for my entire life, from the time I was born, and she wasn't able to really get around on her own. She was disabled, but she used the phone, and it was the old phone with the cord and everything. She would sit in her chair and she'd call people every day. And for her, that was tremendous. She knew the importance of social support. So she would just call friends and she'd call family, and we'd eventually be one of the calls that she would call. And whenever she called me, I was a kid, so sometimes you're like, hey, I want to get back to playing video games or going outside, but it's grandma. So we're going to talk to her. And she always appreciated that when I would take her call. And she always loved it when we go visit her too. So, making sure that you have people to come visit you, that people can stay connected with you in different ways is really important. Health management, again, our health is going to be declining in this aspect. So make sure you have a support network who can help you when your health is declining. Maybe that's where we have, some home health care services where someone's going to come in and help us, because maybe 2 of those 6 daily living activities we need some support with. So make sure we have that support. Maybe, make sure we have support just for as we age, just this, keep us going, keep us positive. We might have to use technology a little bit more to stay in touch with people, like Facebook or Zoom or FaceTime on your phone. But we also, when it comes to visiting doctors, sometimes it might be okay to try a virtual visit because maybe it's hard to get to the doctor's office. Now, when you get to this stage too, that you might have to make a decision: do I want to keep driving or not? I know my one grandma, she was in her 90s and she was stubborn. Yeah, she was an old German lady, and you weren't going to tell her what to do. That's the way she was. But at some point in time, we had to tell her, look, you can't drive anymore. So we had to take the keys away from her, and we had to sell her car. And her car was clean as can be. You could eat off the floor. She kept care of that really well. But she couldn't drive anymore. So then we have to figure out, how do we get her to the doctor? How do we get her hair done? Because that was still important on a weekly basis. How do we get her to get her groceries and go to the bank? So we have to figure that part out. And then make sure you're just, doing routine health maintenance, going to the doctor, getting physicals, getting blood work done, all those things. Make sure that's still an important part. You're getting help with that. Stay active, continue with those support groups. Find some new hobbies. Just find some things that are going to keep you engaged. Sometimes you want to look at mental activities too, like puzzles and different things that are going to keep you mentally engaged. Volunteer. That's where you'll see people a lot of times helping those nonprofits. That's these people. They're doing that for a reason, because they want to stay mentally engaged and get social and get out with other people. Stay physically active. Go for a walk. I had before I moved from Wisconsin, I had a neighbor that lived a couple of houses down from us, and every single night around 4 o'clock or so, they would go for a walk every night. And if one of them was sick, the other one would still go for a walk every single day. I loved it because they know how important that is. Get out and engage with nature, go for a hike, go to the lake, go to the beach, get outside and get some vitamin D, as they say. It's really important to help you just be connected with nature. So today was a lot of stuff we want to talk about as far as how do we think about retirement. So what I want you to do, though, is I want you to think deeper about how you want your retirement to look. And I want you to think about those different stages and say, okay, as I progress, what should this look like? What should I know about? What didn't I think about yet? And how can me and my spouse navigate through this? And what have we missed that we need to think about now and get a plan in place? Now, what I've done is I wanted to help bring some things to light for you to think about. But I also want to give you a resource. Like we always like to teach, but then we want to give some other resources to help you continue to dive deep. And we have a resource here, the Retirement Living Plan 8,000 Days Workbook. And what that workbook does is going to take you through those stages, those 4 stages of retirement. And it's going to have some questions, and it's going to have some blanks for you to fill out, where you guys can do it as a couple. And I want you guys to download that resource so you can start working on it. And this workbook is fantastic. Really, it is. MIT created the workbook. It's a great workbook. Go through it. It's a great practice to kind of create that living plan. I guarantee you, most people probably haven't talked to you about it, but it's really important. It's up there with retirement plan, estate plan, all those things. We got to have that plan as well. So make sure to go to the link in the show notes, which we're putting up right now, and get that document so you can start working on that and start planning out your retirement. If you're already retired, that's okay. Go get the document. Maybe there's some things that we can help you as you navigate further into retirement. So it's a really good resource. Highly recommend it. I didn't make it, but it's something that I think you guys can really find a lot of value in. So again, hopefully something today was something new for you, something new to think about. I want you guys to start really kind of mapping out your retirement and that living plan. It's so important. And again, thanks again for letting me join you today, whether it's on your phone or computer or whatever device you're watching on. Thank you for the opportunity of letting me come and teach to you today. We're live every Thursday, 11 a.m. on the Eastern time zone and 8 a.m. on the Western Coast. Please join us again next week as we dive deeper into things that can help you with your retirement. Thanks again. Have a great week.